Hello everyone, today we are going to learn Chapter 7 India's Cultural Roots from your social science text. In this video, I'll be covering each and every line from the chapter so you don't miss anything important. Make sure to keep your notebook and pen ready and take notes while watching. This will help you remember the concepts better. You can pause or rewind any time to write things down. So, let's begin. First, we have a wise saying. Subhashita. Subhashita means wise saying in Sanskrit. These are often poetic and memorable, similar to proverbs or wise quotes. These are short, meaningful verses that teach us important life lessons. They often talk about kindness, knowledge, truth, honesty, and good behavior. Subhashitas are found in many old books and were used to teach people how to live a good and wise life. So here it is given, that which cannot be stolen, that which cannot be confiscated by rulers, that which is not a burden as it does not weigh anything, that which, though it is used, only grows every day. That is the greatest wealth of all, the wealth of true knowledge. So this wise saying tells us about true knowledge. It says, no one can steal knowledge from you. No king or ruler can take it away from you. It doesn't weigh anything. It means it has no weight. So it's never heavy to carry. And the more you use it, the more it grows. That's why knowledge is called the greatest treasure. Money, toys, and other things can be lost or stolen. But what you learn stays with you forever and helps you every day. So keep learning because knowledge is a gift that grows and stays with you for life. Next we have 3 pictures. First one is a Rishi from Hampi, Karnataka. A Rishi is a wise sage or holy person from ancient India. Sage means a very wise person who has a lot of knowledge, especially about life, nature, or spiritual things. They spend their lives learning, meditating, and teaching people about right living and spirituality. This photo shows a Rishi from Hampi, a famous historical place in Karnataka known for its beautiful temples and stories. Second one is the Buddha from Bhutan. The Buddha was a wise leader who lived long ago and taught people how to be kind, calm, and find peace inside themselves. His real name was Siddhartha Gautama, but people call him the Buddha, which means the enlightened one. Bhutan is a country near India where many people follow the Buddha's teachings. Next we have Mahavir from Bihar. Mahavir was a spiritual leader who taught people about non-violence, truth, and living simply. He is a very important person in Jainism, a religion from India. Bihar is a state in India where Mahavir was born. These 3 important people helped shape the cultures and religions of India and nearby countries. They taught us how to live good, peaceful, and kind lives. So the big questions are, what are the Vedas? What is their message? What new schools of thought emerged in India in the first millennium BCE? What are their core principles? What is the contribution of folk and tribal traditions to Indian culture? So, we will learn answers for these questions in this chapter. Indian culture, by any estimate, is several millenniums old. Like any ancient tree, it has many roots and many branches. The roots nurture a common trunk, and from the trunk emerge many branches which are different manifestations of Indian culture, yet united by a common trunk. Indian culture is very, very old, thousands of years old. It's like a huge ancient tree. The roots are like the old traditions and values from long ago. These roots give strength to the trunk, which is like the main part of our culture. From the trunk grow many branches. These are the different languages, clothes, dances, and customs found in different parts of India. Even though the branches look different, they all belong to the same tree, just like the different parts of Indian culture are all part of one big Indian family. Indian culture is diverse, many kinds, but also united. We may look, speak, or celebrate differently, but we all share the same strong cultural roots. Some of these branches are about art, literature, science, medicine, religion, the art of governance, martial arts, and so on. There are also schools of thought, by which we mean groups of thinkers or spiritual seekers who share similar ideas about human life, the world, etc. A school of thought is a group of people who share the same ideas or beliefs about something. They think in a similar way about how to understand the world, life, or certain problems. For example, in school, you might have different groups of friends who like the same games or books. In the same way, a school of thought is like a group of thinkers who have similar opinions or beliefs. In short, you can say a school of thought is a point of view held by a particular group of people. These people may be thinkers, philosophers, or spiritual leaders who share similar ideas or beliefs. Spiritual, concerned with the spirit or soul, Atman in Sanskrit and many Indian languages. Spirituality is the search for a deeper or higher dimension beyond our current personality. So what does spiritual mean? Spiritual means something that is about the spirit or soul. In Sanskrit and many Indian languages, the word for soul is Atman. Spirituality is the search for something deeper or higher than just what we see or feel every day. It means asking, who am I really? Trying to understand the purpose of life, looking for peace, truth, and connection to something greater like God, the universe, or our inner self. So, spiritual is about the soul or Atman. Spirituality is looking for truth, peace, and deeper meaning in life. Seeker, someone who seeks the truths of this world. This could be a sage, a saint, a yogi, or a philosopher, etc. So, who is a seeker? A seeker is someone who is searching for truth, trying to understand what is the meaning of life, why are we here, what is the right and wrong, how can we find peace and happiness, and who can be a seeker? A seeker can be a sage, a wise person, a saint, a very kind and spiritual person, a yogi, someone who practices yoga and self-control, a philosopher, someone who thinks deeply about life. All of them are trying to find the truth about life and the world. So, a seeker is someone who is looking for deeper knowledge about life, not just normal facts, but spiritual or life truths. In this para, we learn that just like a tree having many branches, Indian culture also has many different parts. Some of these are art, like painting, music and dance, literature, stories, poems, and books written in different languages. Science, learning about nature, space, and how things work. Medicine, how to keep people healthy, like Ayurveda. Religion, beliefs and ways of worship. Governance, how to lead and take care of a country. Martial arts, learning how to protect yourself using your body. Though India has many different groups, they all help us understand the rich and deep culture of India. Many archaeologists and scholars have pointed out that some of India's cultural roots go all the way to the Indus or Harappan or Sindhu Saraswati civilization, which we visit in chapter 6. Later on, over time, hundreds of schools of thought emerged in India. We will see here a few early schools which have shaped India into a country with a unique personality. By understanding them and their roots, we can understand India, that is Bharat, better. Archaeologists are people who study the passed by digging up old things that were left behind by people, animals, and plants. And scholars are people who study and learn deeply. So, many archaeologists and scholars say that India's culture is very, very old. It goes all the way back to the Indus Valley civilization, also called Harappan or Sindhu Saraswati civilization. We will learn more about it in chapter 6. As time passed, many schools of thought, that is, ways of thinking, were born in India. Each one had its own ideas about life, truth, and the world. These early ideas helped shape India's unique personality, meaning they made India special and different from other countries. By learning about these ideas and where they came from, we can better understand the deep and rich culture of our country, India, that is Bharat. First, we will learn about the Vedas and Vedic culture. What are the Vedas? The word Veda comes from the Sanskrit Vid, which means knowledge. Hence, Vidya for instance. We briefly mentioned the Rig Veda in earlier chapters. In fact, there are 4 Vedas, the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. They are the most ancient texts of India and indeed among the most ancient in the world. The word Veda comes from the Sanskrit word Vid, which means knowledge. Words like Vidya, which means learning, also come from the same root. We already spoke a little about the Rig Veda in earlier chapters. But did you know there are 4 Vedas in total? They are Rig Veda, full of hymns, that is prayers to nature and gods. Yajur Veda contains rules for rituals and offerings. Sama Veda has chants and music used in prayers. Atharva Veda includes ideas about daily life, health, and magic. These Vedas are the oldest books from India. In fact, they are some of the oldest texts in the whole world. The Vedas consist of thousands of hymns, prayers in the form of poems and songs that were recited orally, not written. These hymns were composed in the Saptasindhava region, which we visit in chapter 5. It is difficult to say when exactly the Rig Veda, the most ancient of the 4, was composed. Experts have proposed dates ranging from the 5th to the 2nd millennium BCE. So, for anything between 100 and 200 generations, these texts have been committed to memory through rigorous training and passed on orally with hardly any alterations. So, the Vedas are made up of thousands of hymns. These are prayers written as poems or songs. But in ancient times, they were not written down like books are today. Instead, people learned them by heart and recited them. These hymns were first made in a place called the Saptasindhava region. Saptasindhava means land of 7 rivers, an area in northwestern India. We learned about this region in chapter 5. The Rig Veda is the oldest of the 4 Vedas. No one knows the exact date it was made, but experts think it was created sometime between the 5th and the 2nd millennium BCE. That's 3000 to 7000 years ago. That means for 100 to 200 generations, people learned these Vedas just by listening and remembering without changing them. They trained very hard to keep the Vedas exactly the same, even without writing. So, Rig Vedas were created thousands of years ago, and even today we still know them because of this strong memory tradition. Don't miss out. This meticulous transmission over thousands of years explains why in 2008, UNESCO recognized Vedic chanting as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. It promotes dialogue between people and nations through education, science and culture. So, UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific and cultural organization. UNESCO is a group that helps people from all over the world learn, share, and protect their cultures and knowledge. What is Vedic chanting? Vedic chanting means reciting the Vedas, the ancient prayers and hymns. For thousands of years, people in India have passed down the Vedas by speaking and chanting them without writing them down. Because this careful memory tradition lasted for thousands of years, it became something very rare and valuable. That's why in 2008, UNESCO said Vedic chanting is a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. Heritage means important things we get from our past, which are passed down from our parents, grandparents, and even older generations. Intangible heritage means important traditions we can't touch, like music, language, or rituals. Masterpiece means something amazing and valuable. So, UNESCO means that Vedic chanting is one of the greatest treasures of the world because it has been remembered and shared by speech for thousands of years. The Vedic hymns were composed by rishis, male seers or sages, and rishikas, female ones, in an early form of the Sanskrit language. They were addressed in poetical form to many deities, gods or goddesses such as Indra, Agni, Varuna, Mitra, Saraswati, Ushas, and many more. Together with the seers, these deities sustained rhythm or truth and order in human life and in the cosmos. Cosmos, the world or the universe as an ordered and harmonious system. So cosmos means the whole universe, everything in space like stars, planets, the earth, the moon, the sun, and everything around us. The cosmos is ordered and harmonious. Ordered means everything follows rules, like the sun rises every day, the seasons changing in order, and the moon having phases. This is called ordered. Harmonious means everything works well together and feeling balanced. Like when you hear music where all the notes sound good together, that's called harmonious. Everything fits together nicely and feels just right. So in this paragraph, we learned that the Vedic hymns, that is ancient prayers in poem form, were made by special people called rishis, that is male sages, and rishikas, female sages. They used an early form of the Sanskrit language to compose these hymns. These hymns were poems or songs that were sung or chanted to praise many gods and goddesses like Indra. Indra is the god of rain and thunder. Agni, the god of fire. Varuna, the god of water and oceans. Mitra, the god of friendship and harmony. Saraswati, goddess of knowledge and learning. Ushas, goddess of dawn, that is morning. The rishis believed that along with these gods and goddesses, they were helping to keep rhythm. Rhythm, which means truth and order in the world and the whole universe. The early rishis and rishikas saw those gods and goddesses as one, not separate beings. As one famous hymn puts it, Egam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The existent, that is the supreme reality, is one, but sages give it many names. The early rishis and rishikas believed that all the gods and goddesses were actually one and the same, not many different beings. They thought that behind all the different gods, there was one great power. One famous hymn, a sacred poem, says this very clearly. The existent, that is the supreme reality, is one. What does existent mean? Existent means something that truly exists. Not just something we can see, but something that is always there even if we don't see it. In this sentence, it means the one true reality, the deepest truth behind everything. What is supreme reality? Supreme means highest or greatest. Reality means what is really true, not just what we think or imagine. So supreme reality means the highest truth, something beyond everything else like God or the source of all things. So this hymn says that there is only one true reality or power, but wise people or sages called by many different names, or we can say even though there are many gods and goddesses with different names, they all represent the same one supreme power. In this worldview, some values were especially important, beginning with truth, which was often another name for God. The last mantras, verses of the Rig Veda also call for unity among people. So here, worldview means a certain view or understanding of the world, its origin or its workings. So, worldview is the way we see and understand the world, how it began, how it works, and what it means. Some people believe God created the world, that is their worldview. Others believe the world came from science and nature, that's their worldview. In this way of thinking, some values were very important. The most important was truth, which people often thought of as another name for God. At the end of the Rig Veda, there are special verses called mantras that ask for people to live in unity, which means to come together and be one like a big family. Come together, speak together, common be your mind. May your thoughts agree, united be your purpose. United your heart, may your thoughts be united, so all may agree. These lines are asking everyone to come together and to have the same thoughts and to work together as a team. When people think and feel the same way, it helps them agree and get along better. So it's like saying, let's be united, help each other, and live happily together. Vedic society. Early Vedic society was organized in different janas or clans, that is, larger groups of people. The Rig Veda alone lists over 30 such janas. For instance, the Bharatas, the Purus, the Kurus, the Yadus, the Turvashas, etc. Each clan was associated with a particular region of the northwest part of the subcontinent. So, in early Vedic times, people lived in big groups called janas, which means clans or big groups of people. A clan is a large group of families that are related to each other and live together. Imagine your big extended family, your cousins, uncles, aunts and grandparents all living and working together. That's like a clan. In early Vedic times, a clan was called a jana in Sanskrit. People in a clan shared the same customs, prayed to the same gods, and often fought wars together. Each clan lived in a specific region and was an important part of society. The Rig Veda mentions more than 30 such clans. Some of these clans were the Bharatas, the Purus, the Kurus, the Yadus, the Turvashas, etc. Each clan lived in a different area in the northwest part of India called the subcontinent. What is a subcontinent? Subcontinent means a big piece of land that is a part of a continent, but is special and big enough to be called its own part. For example, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and nearby countries together make the Indian subcontinent. Not much is known of how these janas governed their society. The Vedas only give us a few clues through words like Raja, a king or ruler, Sabha and Samiti, both of which refer to a collective gathering or assembly. So we don't know a lot about how these big groups or janas were ruled long ago. But the Vedas give us some clues. They mention words like Raja, which means king or ruler, the person in charge. Sabha and Samiti, which means a group of people coming together to talk and make decisions. So it seems these groups had leaders and meetings where people discussed important things. Many professions are mentioned in the Vedic texts, such as agriculturist, weaver, potter, builder, carpenter, healer, dancer, barber, priest, etc. Here we have the meaning for the healer. It is someone who uses traditional practices to relieve or heal diseases. So who is a healer? Healer is someone who helps sick people get better. They use traditional ways like herbs, plants, or special treatments to make people healthy again. In the Vedic times, people did many different jobs. The old texts called the Vedas talk about some of these jobs, like agriculturist, someone who grows food on farms. Weaver, someone who makes clothes from threads. Potter, someone who makes pots and clay things. Builder, people who build houses. And carpenter, who make things from wood. Healer, we already learned that he is someone who helps people get better when they are sick. Dancer, someone who performs dances. Barber, someone who cuts hair. Priest, someone who leads prayers and religious ceremonies. People had different jobs and all were important for the community to live well. Let's explore. Do you know the term for a society where people select their leaders? How do you think people can benefit from such a situation? What could happen if they live under leaders that they did not choose? Hint, think back to what you are learning in the theme, governance and democracy. Write your thoughts in a paragraph of 100 to 150 words. Do you know what we call a society where the people choose their own leaders? Yes, that kind of society is called a democracy. In a democracy, people vote to select their leaders, which means people can help decide how the country is run. This helps make sure that leaders work for the good of the people, because if they don't, people can choose someone else in the next election. This makes leaders more honest and responsible. People will also feel more free and safe because their opinions matter. But if people have to live under leaders they did not choose, those leaders might not listen to them. They might make unfair rules and people may feel helpless or ignored. That's why democracy is important. It gives people power to choose and helps everyone have the right to take part in decisions that affect their lives. You can write your thoughts in a paragraph of 100 to 150 words. Vedic schools of thought. Vedic culture also developed many rituals. Yajna, often read as Yagya, directed towards various deities, gods or goddesses for individual or collective benefit and well-being. Daily rituals were generally in the form of prayers and offerings to Agni, the deity associated with fire. But those rituals became more and more complex in the course of time. So in Vedic culture, people believed that doing rituals help bring good things to their lives. What is a ritual? A ritual can include things like praying, offering food to gods, lighting lamps, or singing hymns. It is a special action that people do in the same way every time, usually for religious or cultural reasons. People perform rituals during festivals, weddings, funerals, or daily worship. Rituals are often done to show respect to gods, ask for blessings, or celebrate important events. So these rituals were called yajna, also written as yagya. People did these rituals to please different gods and goddesses, either for themselves or for the whole community. One of the most important god was Agni, the god of fire. People gave offerings like ghee, grains, or prayers into the fire because they believed Agni carried their messages to the other gods. In the beginning, the rituals were simple and done every day, but over time, they became more and more complicated with many steps and special rules. A group of texts known as Upanishads built upon Vedic concepts and introduced new ones such as rebirth, taking birth again and again, and karma, our actions or their results. According to one school of thought, generally known as Vedanta, everything, human life, nature and the universe is one divine essence called Brahman, not to be confused with the god Brahma, or sometimes just that. Two well-known mantras express this in a simple but profound way. So after the Vedas, a new set of important books came called the Upanishads. These books talked more deeply about life and big questions like rebirth and karma. Rebirth means the idea that people are born again and again. Karma, what you do. That is, your actions will bring good or bad results. One group of thinkers called Vedanta believe that everything, people, nature, and even the whole universe is made up of one divine power called Brahman. This Brahman is not the same as the god Brahma, who is one of the Hindu gods and has a long sound. Brahman is a spiritual power inside everything. Sometimes they just called it Tat, which means that. This idea is shown in two simple but deep mantras. Mantras means prayers or sayings from the Upanishads. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. That is to say, I am divine. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. Aham Brahmasmi. This means I am Brahman. It means I have the same divine power inside me. In simple words, you can say, I am not just a body or a name. I am also part of the one great power, that is Brahman. Tat Tvam Asi. This means you are that. It means you also have that same divine power inside you. In simple words, you can say that the great power, that is Brahman, is inside you too. These mantras tell us that we are all connected. Every person, every part of nature and the whole universe shares the same divine power. We are all part of that one. The Upanishads also introduced the concept of Atman or self, the divine essence that resides in every being but is ultimately one with Brahman. It follows that everything in this world is connected and interdependent. The Upanishads also talk about something called Atman. Atman means the self, the divine spark or spirit that lives inside every person and every living being. The Upanishads say that this Atman is actually the same as Brahman, which is the divine power or spiritual force behind the whole universe. So this means that everyone and everything is connected. All living things are part of one great whole. We are interdependent, which means we need each other and we are all part of one big family. When we hurt others or nature, we are actually hurting ourselves too. This explains a common prayer that begins with Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, or may all creatures be happy, and goes on to wish them all to be free from disease and sorrow. Because the Upanishads teach that all living beings are connected and share the same divine power, people began to pray not just for themselves but for everyone. One famous prayer begins with Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. This means, may all creatures be happy. This prayer also says, may everyone be free from sickness and sadness. It shows that in this way of thinking, we should care for all living beings, not just people, but animals, plants, and nature too, because they are all part of the same world. Think about it. Have you heard or read any other story that conveyed an important message? What values did it teach you? Have you heard or read any story that gave you a meaningful message? What values or lessons you learned from that story? Values are the good qualities or life lessons we learn, like honesty, kindness, bravery, respect. If you read the story of the honest woodcutter, the message is about being truthful and the value it teaches is honesty. So, you need to remember and share a story that helped you become a better person. Early in the first millennium BCE, several more schools of thought grew out of the Vedas. One of them was yoga, which developed methods intended to achieve the realization of Brahman in one's consciousness. Together, these schools of thought became the foundations for what we call Hinduism today. Consciousness, this quality or state of being aware, for instance, of something within oneself. So what is consciousness? Consciousness means being aware or knowing what is happening, especially inside your mind. For example, when you notice that you're feeling happy or sad, when you think about your thoughts or feelings. Consciousness is the ability to know what you're thinking or feeling. It's your inner awareness. Early in the first millennium BCE means the early part of the 1000 years before the Common Era started roughly from 1000 BCE to 500 BCE, approximately 2500 to 3000 years ago. Many new ideas and teachings started to grow from the Vedas. One of them was yoga. Back then, yoga was not just about exercise. It was a way of thinking and living that helped people realize Brahman, the divine truth or spiritual force, deep inside their own mind and soul. This is called consciousness. Yoga taught people how to connect with the divine through meditation, discipline, and self-control. These schools of thought, including yoga and others, became the foundation or the base of what we now call Hinduism. So Hinduism is made up of many ideas that started with the Vedas and grew over time. The timeline on page 108 shows how Indian philosophical thinking grew from around 1800 BCE to 1000 CE. The Upanishads were written from around 1700 BCE to 400 BCE. BCE means before Common Era. Time in BCE goes backward. For example, 1500 BCE is earlier than 500 BCE. From about 900 BCE, different Vedic schools started to grow. These schools explained the old ideas in new ways and continued to develop until around 100 CE. And from around 600 BCE, two great spiritual leaders, Gautama Buddha and Mahavira, were born. They started the religions Buddhism and Jainism. During this time, many ideas and beliefs were shared and discussed. The overlap in this timeline shows a period of rich philosophical debate where different traditions coexisted, influenced each other, and shaped India's cultural roots. Buddhism. Other schools of thought also emerged which did not accept the authority of the Vedas and developed their own systems. One of them is Buddhism. So as time went on, other schools of thought also emerged in ancient India. These were groups of people who had different ideas about life, truth, and how to live. Some of them did not accept the authority of the Vedas and they developed their own systems of thought. One of the most well-known is Buddhism. About 2.5 millenniums ago, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama was born in Lumbini, today in Nepal. Depending on the sources they use, scholars have come up with widely different conclusions as regards the precise year of his birth. In chapter 4, we chose 560 BCE as an approximate year. In any case, it makes no difference to our story here. So about 2500 years ago, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama was born in a place called Lumbini, which is in today's Nepal. Different sources give different years for his birth, but in chapter 4, we used 560 BCE as an approximate date. But don't worry, the exact year isn't important for our story. What matters is what Siddhartha did with his life and how his journey led to the beginning of Buddhism. As the story goes, then Siddhartha Gautama grew up living a protected life in the palace. One day, at the age of 29, he asked to be driven through the city in a chariot. And for the first time in his life, he came across an old man, a sick man, and a dead body. According to the story, Siddhartha Gautama was a prince who lived a safe, comfortable, and protected life. Protected life means a life where he was kept safe from all problems. He only saw happy things inside the palace. But when he was 29 years old, he went out into the city in a chariot. Chariot means a kind of carriage with horses. So when Siddhartha Gautama went into the city, for the first time in his life, he saw three things he had never seen before. An old man, a sick man, and a dead body. He also saw an ascetic who appeared to be happy and at peace. Following this experience, Siddhartha decided to give up his palace life, leaving behind his wife and son. Traveling on foot as an ascetic, meeting other ascetics and scholars, he searched for the root cause of suffering in human life. An ascetic is someone who engages in a rigorous discipline to attain a higher consciousness. So, who is an ascetic? An ascetic is a person who gives up all comforts like nice clothes, tasty food, or a soft bed and lives a very simple and strict life. They do this to understand deep truths or to find peace and wisdom. So, on his way, Siddhartha also saw an ascetic. Who is an ascetic? A holy man who had left behind all comforts and living a simple life. Even without wealth, the ascetic looked peaceful and happy. After seeing this, Siddhartha decided to leave his palace, his wife and his son. He walked from place to place, living like an ascetic, meeting other holy men and wise people. He was trying to find out why people suffer in life. Suffering means feeling pain, sadness, or having a hard time. After meditating for many days under a peepal tree at Bodh Gaya, today in Bihar, he attained enlightenment. He realized that avidya, ignorance, and attachment are the source of human suffering and conceived a method to remove these two causes. What is meditation? Meditation is a way to calm your busy mind. When you meditate, you sit quietly and try to stop your thoughts from jumping around so much. This helps you feel peaceful and calm inside. So Siddhartha Gautama meditated under a peepal tree at a place called Bodh Gaya, which is in today's Bihar. And it was there that he became enlightened and understood many important truths about life. Because of this, the peepal tree is sometimes called the Bodhi tree. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment means understanding the deep truth about life. When someone reaches enlightenment, they understand why people suffer, how to stop suffering, how to live a peaceful and happy life. So after his enlightenment, Buddha taught others how to find peace and end suffering. He realized that the main reasons people suffer are avidya. Avidya, a Sanskrit word meaning ignorance or not knowing or understanding the truth. For example, we may think that money or fame will always make us happy, but that's not always true. The Buddha said that ignorance is one reason why people suffer. And the other one is attachment, getting too emotionally attached to people or things. When you really care about someone or something and don't want to lose them, that's attachment. For example, if you lose your favorite toy and feel sad for many days, that's attachment. If you are always afraid of losing something, that can cause suffering. The Buddha taught that letting go of too much attachment helps us find peace. He then found a way to remove these causes and help people live a peaceful life. So what is attachment? The condition of having a bond with someone or something, usually through sentiment or habit. Siddhartha then became known as the Buddha, which means the enlightened or awakened one. So Siddhartha was later called the Buddha. The word Buddha means the one who is enlightened or the one who has awakened. This means he had understood the true meaning of life and how to be free from suffering. The Buddha started teaching what he had realized, including the idea of ahimsa, which is generally translated as non-violence but originally means non-hurting or non-injuring. He also insisted on a sincere inner discipline. The following saying of his expresses this simply. The Buddha began teaching the important things he had learned. One of them was ahimsa, which we generally translate to non-violence, but it actually means not hurting or injuring any living. He also believed that people should have sincere inner discipline, which means truly trying to be a good person, controlling your thoughts, words, and actions, doing the right thing even when no one is watching, being honest, kind, and calm from the inside, not just pretending. The Buddha believed that real goodness starts inside the heart and mind, not just in what we show others. Here is a simple saying of his that explains this idea. Not by water is one made pure, though many people may bathe here in sacred rivers, but one is pure in whom truth and dharma reside. Conquering oneself is greater than conquering 1,000 men on the battlefield 1,000 times. This saying means bathing in water, even in holy rivers, does not make a person truly pure or good. What really makes someone pure is having truthfulness, that is being honest, and dharma, that is doing what is right in their heart. It also says controlling yourself, your thoughts, feelings, and actions is much harder and more important than winning many battles 1,000 times against others. So the biggest victory is to win over yourself and be a better and kinder person. The Buddha founded the Sangha, a community of bhikshus or monks, and later bhikshunis or nuns, who dedicated themselves to practicing and spreading his teachings. His influence on India and indeed the whole of Asia was enormous, as we will discover later. It is still perceptible today. Monk, a man who, giving up the usual life in the world, dedicates himself to religious or spiritual pursuits. A monk usually takes vows, that is, commits himself to follow strict rules for a disciplined life. So who is a monk? A monk is a man who leaves behind the normal life of work, family, and everyday things to focus on religious or spiritual life. He usually promises to follow special rules to live a simple and disciplined life. This helps him learn more about peace, kindness, and understanding. Nun, the female equivalent of a monk. So a nun is a woman who, like a monk, gives up regular life to focus on a religious or spiritual life. So the Buddha started the Sangha. Sangha, a group or community of people who follow the Buddha's path. It first had monks called bhikshus, and later it also had nuns called bhikshunis. These were people who left their homes to follow the Buddha's teachings. They spent their lives learning, meditating, and teaching others. The Buddha's teachings had a big impact on India and many countries in Asia. Perceptible means that something can be seen, heard, or noticed. The Buddha's influence is still perceptible. That is, still we can see Buddha's influence in art, temples, and people's beliefs. Even today, people still follow his ideas and remember what he taught. Here we have a picture of Buddha teaching his followers. This stone panel, some 1800 years old, shows the Buddha teaching. Let's explore. Discuss the way the Buddha is depicted in the above panel. In this stone panel, the Buddha is standing while teaching. The other people around him are looking at him respectfully with their hands joined together. Joining hands like this is a way to show respect. And they are listening carefully. This picture shows how people admired the Buddha and wanted to learn from him. Can you name some states of India or some other countries where Buddhism is a major religion even today? Try to plot this on a world map. In India, states with significant Buddhist populations or heritage are Maharashtra, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, and Ladakh. Buddhism started in India, but today it's followed in many parts of Asia. Other countries where Buddhism is a major religion are Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, which is also called Burma, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Laos, Mongolia, Japan, Vietnam, China, South Korea, Malaysia, and Nepal. Many stories from the Upanishads tell us the importance of asking questions, whether these questions come from men, women, or children. So many stories in the Upanishads teach us that asking questions is very important. It doesn't matter if the questions come from men, women, or children. Asking questions helps us learn and understand more about life. So now, let's find out how asking questions can lead to great wisdom through these short stories from the Upanishads. Shvetaketu and the Seed of Reality from Chandogya Upanishad. Swetaketu and the Seed of Reality is the story about a boy named Swetaketu and an important lesson about the seed of reality. That is the hidden truth or the real essence of everything. It is a story from Chandogya Upanishad. Rishi Uddalaka Aruni sent his son Swetaketu to a Gurukul to learn the Vedas. When Swetaketu returned 12 years later, his father realized he had become very proud of his learning. So Uddalaka tested him with questions on the nature of Brahman, which Swetaketu could not answer. Rishi Uddalaka Aruni sent his son Swetaketu to a Gurukul, a traditional school, to learn the Vedas, that is, ancient sacred text. After 12 years, Swetaketu came back, but his father noticed that he had become a little proud about all that he had learned. So Uddalaka decided to ask Swetaketu some important questions about the true nature of Brahman, the ultimate reality or truth. Swetaketu couldn't answer these questions, which showed that learning from books is not enough to understand the deepest truths. Uddalaka proceeded to explain how Brahman, though invisible, is everywhere, just as the seed of a banyan fruit seems empty when you open it, but already contains the future banyan tree, or just as all kinds of different pots can be made out of the same clay. Similarly, everything around us has emerged from the same essence, Brahman. He concluded his teaching with these words: everything consists of this subtle essence. You are that Swetaketu. So Uddalaka explained to his son Swetaketu that Brahman is the true reality. It cannot be seen or touched, but it is everywhere in all things and all people. To help Swetaketu understand this big idea, Uddalaka gave him a simple example. Have you seen a banyan tree? It's big and wide, with lots of roots hanging down. And this is its fruit. It's not very big, but inside the fruit are tiny seeds. If you open a banyan seed, it looks empty. There is nothing you can really see inside. Even though it looks empty, inside this tiny seed is the whole future banyan tree. Can you believe such a big tree comes from such a tiny seed? That's what Brahman is like. You can't see it, but it is there in everything, just like the big tree is hidden inside a tiny seed. Uddalaka gave another simple example to help Swetaketu understand Brahman. Look at these pots. They are all different shapes and sizes. Some are big, some are small, some are round. But all of them are made from the same clay. Just like that, everything in the world may look different. People, animals, trees, rivers, stars. But they all come from the same essence, and that essence is Brahman. This means everything around us is connected. You, me, the sky, the earth, all are part of one invisible, subtle reality called Brahman. And finally, Uddalaka looked at his son and said, you are that Swetaketu. This means you too are Brahman. The same truth that is in the whole universe is also inside you. Isn't that amazing? Even though we are all different, we are all made from the same deep truth, Brahman. Next story is Nachiketa and his quest from Katha Upanishad. Once a man was giving away all his possessions in a ritual. As his son Nachiketa kept asking him which god he would be offered to, the father became angry and answered, I give you to Yama, that is, to the god of death. Once there was a man who was giving away all his things in a special ceremony. His son Nachiketa was watching closely and kept asking, Father, to which god will you offer me? This question made his father upset. In anger, he said, I give you to Yama, who is the god of death. Nachiketa then proceeded to Yama's world and after a long wait met the mighty god. One question was on his mind. What happens after the death of the body? Yama tried to avoid answering, but the boy persisted. Pleased Yama explained that the Atman or self is hidden within all creatures. So after hearing his father's answer, Nachiketa went to the world of Yama, the god of death. After waiting for a long time, he finally met Yama. Nachiketa had one big question in his heart. What happens after the body dies? Yama didn't want to answer at first and tried to avoid the question. But Nachiketa didn't give up. He kept asking because he really wanted to know the truth. Seeing the boy's courage and determination, Yama was pleased. He explained that inside every living thing there is a true self called the Atman. It is neither born nor does it die. It is immortal. Having acquired this profound knowledge, Nachiketa returned to his father, who welcomed him joyfully. Yama told Nachiketa that the Atman, the self or soul, is very special. It is not born or it does not die. This means it is immortal or it lives forever. After learning this important truth, Nachiketa went back to his father, who was very happy to see him. This means that inside every living being, there is something called the Atman or soul. The special thing about the Atman is that it never dies and was never born. It lasts forever. So even though our body might grow old and die, this inner self or soul continues to live on. This idea teaches us that life doesn't end with the body. There is something deeper and eternal inside us. Eternal means lasting forever. Next story is the debate of Gargi and Yagnavalkya from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Once the wise Janaka announced a prize for the winner of a philosophical debate. Yagnavalkya, a renowned rishi, came to the king's court and defeated many scholars until Gargi, a rishika, asked him a series of questions on the nature of the world and finally on the nature of Brahman. Once, the wise king Janaka announced a prize for anyone who could win a big philosophical debate at his court. Many scholars and teachers came to the king's court to take part. One of them was the most famous Yagnavalkya, a wise rishi known for his deep knowledge. Yagnavalkya spoke so well that he defeated many scholars one by one. But then a brave and clever woman named Gargi, who was also a rishika, that is a female sage, stepped forward. She asked Yagnavalkya many tough questions about the nature of the world. And finally, she questioned him about the true nature of Brahman, that is the ultimate reality. At that point, Yagnavalkya asked her to stop asking further questions. Later, however, Gargi resumed her questions and Yagnavalkya went on to explain how Brahman is what makes the world, the seasons, the rivers and everything else possible. When Gargi kept asking difficult questions, Yagnavalkya first told her to stop because the questions were very deep and hard to answer. But later, Gargi continued asking questions, showing she really wanted to learn. Yagnavalkya then explained patiently that Brahman is the true power that creates the whole world. It makes the seasons change, the rivers flow, and everything else happen. This means that Brahman is the invisible force of power behind everything in the world. Even though we can't see Brahman directly, it is the reason everything happens and everything is connected. So Brahman is like the energy or power that keeps the whole world going. These stories teaches us that asking questions, even the biggest and toughest ones, is a way to discover truth and grow wiser. And that anyone, man, woman, young or old, can be a great seeker of knowledge. Jainism. Jainism is another important school of thought that became widespread at the same time, although its roots are said to be much more ancient. Just like Siddhartha Gautama, Prince Vardhaman was born into a royal family in the early 6th century BCE. This means that Jainism is another important way of thinking or believing, like Buddhism. It became popular around the same time as Buddhism. But people believe that Jainism started even earlier, so it has older roots. Just like Siddhartha Gautama was born as a prince, Vardhaman was also born into a royal family. He was born in the early 6th century BCE, that means about 2600 years ago. His birthplace was near the city of Vaishali in modern-day Bihar. At the age of 30, he decided to leave his home and go in search of spiritual knowledge. He practiced an ascetic discipline and after 12 years achieved infinite knowledge or supreme wisdom. He became known as Mahavir or great hero and started preaching what he had realized. Here we see a traditional painting of Mahavir. So Prince Vardhaman was born near a city called Vaishali, which is in today's Bihar. When he was 30 years old, he chose to leave his home and royal life. He wanted to find spiritual knowledge. That means understanding the truth about life and the soul. He lived a very simple and strict life, giving up all comforts like an ascetic. After 12 years of ascetic discipline, he reached something called infinite knowledge. That is, he reached a state where he had complete understanding of life, truth, and the universe, or we can say supreme wisdom, meaning the highest kind of knowledge a person can have. People began calling him Mahavir, which means great hero. After reaching supreme wisdom, he began preaching. That means teaching others what he had learned. Don't miss out. The word Jain or Jaina comes from Jina, meaning conqueror. This does not refer to the conquest of territory or enemies, but to the conquest of ignorance and attachments, so as to reach enlightenment. So, the name Jain comes from the word Jina. Jina means conqueror, someone who has won or overcome something. But this doesn't mean winning a war or fighting enemies. It means conquering ignorance, that is not knowing the truth, and attachments like desires and selfish thoughts. By conquering these, a person can reach enlightenment, which means full understanding and inner peace. Jain teachings include Ahimsa, Anekantvad, and Aparigraha. These ideas share to a large extent with Buddhism and the Vedantic school of thought are central to Indian culture. The first may be illustrated by this saying of Mahavir. So Jainism teaches three important ideas. Ahimsa, not hurting any living being, that is non-violence. Anekantvad, understanding that truth can have many sides. Aparigraha, not being attached to too many things, that is non-possessiveness or non-attachment. These ideas are also found in Buddhism and Vedanta, which is another way of thinking. And they are very important in Indian culture. The first idea, Ahimsa, can be explained by this saying of Mahavir. All breathing, existing, living, sentient creatures should not be slain, not treated with violence, nor abused, nor tormented, nor driven away. Sentient means able to feel things like pain, happiness, fear, or love. A sentient being is a living creature that can feel emotions, sense what's happening around them, and react to pain or kindness. Example of sentient beings are human, animals like dogs, cows, birds, even insects. Here, Mahavir is talking about all living creatures. Anyone who breathes, exists, and can feel things, that is sentient, like humans, animals, birds, and even tiny insects. Slain means killed, usually in a violent way. The quote says, creatures should not be slain. It means they should not be killed. We should not kill them. We should not be cruel to them, not abuse or torment. Abuse means treating someone or something in a cruel or hurtful way. Torment means to cause great pain or suffering, either physical or emotional, again and again. This is even worse than abuse because it means making someone suffer for a long time on purpose. And we should not chase them away. In simple words, be kind and gentle to all living beings. Do not harm anyone in any way. This is the true meaning of Ahimsa, that is non-violence. Let us define the last two in simple terms. Anekantvad means not just one aspect or perspective. That is, the truth has many aspects and cannot be fully described by any single statement. Now, let's understand the word Anekantvad. It means not just one or having many sides. This means that truth has many different sides or points of view. So one single statement cannot explain the whole truth completely. Anekandwat says that the truth has many sides. We should try to understand things from different points of view. Aparigraha means non-possession and advises detachment from material possessions, limiting oneself to what is truly necessary in life. So what is aparigraha? It means non-possession, not holding on to too many things. It teaches us to be detached from material possessions. That means not getting too attached to money or things. Instead, we should keep only what is truly necessary for life. In simple words, don't keep too many things. Be happy with what you really need. Jainism also insists on interconnectedness and interdependence of all creatures, from humans to invisible organisms, as they support each other and cannot live without one another. Scientists studying nature, flora, and fauna have again and again confirmed this deep truth. Jainism teaches us that all living things are connected. Interdependence. This means humans, animals, plants, and even tiny invisible organisms like bacteria all depend on each other. They support one another and cannot live alone. Flora means plants like trees, flowers, grass, and bushes. Fauna means animals like birds, insects, fish, and mammals. So when someone says flora and fauna, they are talking about all the plants and animals in nature. Scientists who study nature, animals, and plants have also found this. That is, all living things are connected to be true many times. In simple words, everything in nature is linked and depends on each other to live and grow. The Jatak tales, which have delighted generations of Indian children and adults, tell stories of the Buddha's former births and express in simple terms the Buddhist values. So what are Jatak tales? The Jatak tales are special stories that many Indian children and adults have enjoyed for a long time. These stories talk about the previous lives of the Buddha before he became the Buddha we know. They also teach important Buddhist values like kindness, honesty, and helping others in simple and easy way to understand. In short, Jatak tales are stories that teach us good lessons from Buddha's past lives. In a well-known tale, the Buddha was the king of a large troop of monkeys. They lived near a huge tree which bore fruit of divine fragrance and taste. Despite the monkey king's instructions that no food should escape, one day a ripe fruit fell into the stream below. Carried by the current, it was caught in a net and taken to the palace. The king was so enchanted by its taste that he ordered his soldiers to locate the tree it came from. So in this well-known story, the Buddha was once the king of a big group of monkeys. They lived near a very big tree that had fruit with wonderful smell and taste like something magical. The monkey king told everyone, don't let any fruit fall from the tree. But one day, a ripe fruit fell into the stream. The fruit floated down the water and got caught in a net. It was taken all the way to the palace. The king of the palace tried the fruit and loved its amazing taste. He was enchanted. Enchanted means being very amazed, delighted, or fascinated by something, like it feels magical or very special. So he told his soldiers to find the tree where the fruit came from. After a long search, they found the tree and the monkeys enjoying the tree's fruits. The soldiers attacked the monkeys. The only way for the monkey king to save his monkeys was to help them cross the stream. But they could not do so on their own. Being much larger than them, the monkey king caught hold of a tree on the other bank and let them use his body as a bridge to cross the stream, although he was severely bruised in the process and eventually died. So after searching for a long time, the soldiers finally found the big tree and saw the monkeys happily eating its fruit. The soldiers attacked the monkeys to catch them. The monkey king wanted to save his friends, but the monkeys could not cross the stream by themselves. Because the monkey king was much bigger, he held on to a tree on the other side of the stream. He let the monkeys climb on his body like a bridge so they could cross safely. Even though the monkey king got badly hurt and bruised, he did this to protect his friends. Sadly, he was so hurt that he died. The king, who watched the scene from a distance, was greatly moved by the Monkey King's selfless sacrifice. He thought about the role of a king with respect to his subjects. The king, who was watching from far away, saw what the Monkey King did. He felt very touched by the Monkey King's selfless sacrifice. Selfless sacrifice means giving up something for others without thinking about himself. The king then started thinking deeply about what it means to be a good king. He thought about how a king should care for and protect his people, just like the Monkey King cared for his monkeys. So this story of the Monkey King teaches us the important lessons about leadership and kindness. A stone panel at Bharhut in Madhya Pradesh depicting the story of the Monkey King. There is a stone panel which is like a card picture made out of stone at a place called Bharhut in Madhya Pradesh. This stone panel shows the story of the Monkey King and what he did to save his friends. Here you can see the Monkey King holding on to another tree while the other monkeys cross the stream using him as a bridge. It is an old and important piece of art that helps us remember and understand this story. Next we have a Jain story. Rohineya was an extraordinarily skilled burglar who evaded all attempts to catch him. On his way to the city, he accidentally heard a few sentences from a sermon that Mahavir was giving about achieving liberation from the ordinary life of ignorance. Reaching the city, Rohineya was recognized and arrested. He pretended to be a simple farmer. A minister devised a clever plan to force him to confess his identity. But Rohineya, remembering Mahavir's words, was able to detect the minister's plan and defeat it. Rohineya was a very skilled burglar who was never caught. A burglar is a person who breaks into a building like a house or shop to steal things. One day, while walking toward a city, he accidentally heard a few sentences from a sermon. Sermon is a speech about living a good and truthful life, being given by Mahavir. Mahavir was teaching people how to become free from a life full of ignorance and bad actions. When Rohineya reached the city, someone recognized him as a thief and he was arrested. To avoid punishment, Rohineya pretended to be a farmer. The king's minister made a smart plan to make Rohineya admit his true identity. But Rohineya remembered the wise words by Mahavir. Because of that, he understood the minister's plan and was able to stop it. Feeling remorseful, Rohineya approached Mahavir, confessed his crimes, returned the stolen treasures, and asked for forgiveness. He became a monk, realized the illusion he was living in, and focused on acquiring higher knowledge. So after escaping the minister's trick, Rohineya felt very sorry for all the wrong things he had done. He went to Mahavir, told him the truth about his crimes, and gave back all the stolen treasures. Rohineya asked for forgiveness. He then decided to leave his old life and become a monk, someone who gives up all comforts to live simply and learn spiritual truths. He began to understand that he had been living in an illusion, believing that stealing and lying would make him happy. Now, he focused on gaining true knowledge and living an honest and peaceful life. The story illustrates the importance of right action and right thinking, and also illustrates the fact that everyone should have a second chance. This story teaches us two important lessons. First one is right action and right thinking are very important. This means we should always try to do what is good and think carefully about our choices. The second lesson is everyone deserves a second chance. Even if someone makes mistakes, they can change, learn from them and become better. So the story of Rohineya shows us that it's never too late to do the right thing and start fresh. Let's explore. Observe the above panel from a Jain temple in New Delhi. What is striking about it? What messages does it carry? This panel from a Jain temple in New Delhi shows something very unusual and beautiful. It shows a lion and a cow drinking from the same vessel and even feeding each other's babies. Normally, a lion and the cow are not friends. A lion is a wild animal and it usually hunts other animals. But in this picture, the lion and the cow are calm and sharing water happily. It shows the idea of peace and harmony between all living beings, no matter how different they are. It teaches us ahimsa, which means non-violence, not hurting anyone, even animals that might usually be enemies. It reminds us that all creatures can live together kindly and respectfully. The panel encourages us to be compassionate and care for others, just like the lion and the cow. Think about it. In both Buddhism and Jainism, ahimsa means much more than refraining from physical violence against a person or an animal. It also means refraining from violence in thought, such as having ill feelings towards anyone. If we observe ourselves carefully, we may notice such negative thoughts and learn to turn them into positive ones. Sometimes, such negative thoughts are even directed at ourselves. In both Buddhism and Jainism, ahimsa means much more than just not hurting others with our hands. It means we should also avoid hurting them with our thoughts, like not having bad or angry feelings about anyone. If we watch our thoughts carefully, we might see that sometimes we think negative or unkind things about others or even about ourselves. The important lesson is to change those negative thoughts into positive and kind ones. In simple words, ahimsa means being kind in our actions, words, and in our thoughts too. In both Buddhism and Jainism, monks and sometimes nuns too began traveling across the land to spread their respective teachings far and wide. Some of them created new monasteries in faraway places, while others led ascetic lives in caves cut in the rock. Archaeological findings have revealed many traces of those monasteries. Sometimes even the names of the monks who lived in the rock-cut caves and slept on the stone beds. So in both Buddhism and Jainism, monks and sometimes nuns started traveling to many places to share their teachings with others. Some of these monks built new monasteries, which are special places where monks live and study. Others chose to live very simply and strictly as ascetics in caves carved out of rock. Archaeologists, that is people who study old things, have found many signs of these monasteries and caves. Sometimes they even found the names of the monks who lived there and slept on stone beds. Here we have a picture. Caves cut into rock at Ellora, Maharashtra between the 6th and the 10th century CE. Some of the caves are Hindu, others are Buddhist and Jain. So these are caves carved directly into the rock at a place called Ellora in Maharashtra. They were made between the 6th and the 10th century CE, which means over 1000 years ago. The caves belong to 3 different religions: Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. Each religion has its own special caves with sculptures and designs showing their beliefs and stories. These caves were used as places for prayer, meditation and living by monks and followers. It's amazing, isn't it, how people long ago made such beautiful and detailed caves by carving into solid rock. Think about it. In English, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism are often labeled religions. You may notice that we have avoided this term, preferring schools of thought and later in this chapter, belief systems. This is because there are many aspects to those schools and systems, which we will explore gradually. A philosophical aspect, a spiritual aspect, a religious aspect, an ethical aspect, a social aspect, to name a few. Many scholars agree that the word religion is too limiting in the context of the Indian civilization. So in English, we often call Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism as religions. But here, we use other words like schools of thought or belief systems. That's because these are not just about religion, they have many parts like philosophical aspect. This is about thinking deeply and asking big questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? Each belief system like Hinduism or Buddhism has its own way of explaining life and the universe. Spiritual aspect. This is about feeling connected to something greater than ourselves like God, the universe or inner peace. It is often a personal feeling, not just rules or rituals. Religious aspect. This part includes prayers, rituals, gods, temples, and festivals. It's how people show their faith and worship. Ethical aspect. This is about knowing what is right and wrong. It teaches us to be kind, honest, and fair. All belief systems give us rules for good behavior. Social aspect. This includes how people live together in society, follow traditions, and take care of each other. It also includes festivals, family roles, and community work. Many experts say the word religion is too small or simple to explain all these parts in Indian culture. So, using schools of thought or belief systems helps us understand these ideas better. There were yet other schools of thought at the time. For example, one of them known as the Charvaka school, sometimes also Lokayata, believed that this material world is the only thing that exists and therefore there can be no life after death. The school does not seem to have gained much popularity and it disappeared with time. We mention it to show that there was a wide diversity of intellectual or spiritual belief systems. People were free to choose what suited them. So at that time, there were many different schools of thought. One of these was called Charvaka school, also called Lokayata. They believed that only the material world, the things we can see and touch, really exist. Because of this, they thought that there is no life after death. This idea didn't become very popular and slowly disappeared over time. It is mentioned about this here to show that the people had many different ideas and beliefs. Everyone was free to choose the one that made the most sense to them. Here, intellectual means things related to the mind and thinking. Spiritual means things related to feelings inside us about life, purpose, and something bigger than ourselves. Although the Vedic, Buddhist, and Jain schools had important differences, they also shared some common concepts such as dharma, karma, rebirth, the search for an end to suffering and ignorance, and many important values. This is the trunk of the tree we started this chapter with. So the Vedic, Buddhist, and Jain schools of thought had some important differences, but they also shared many ideas in common, like dharma, that is doing what is right, karma, the effects of our actions, rebirth, being born again and again after death, the search to end suffering and ignorance, and many important values. Values means things we believe are good. These shared ideas are like the trunk of a tree, the main part of the tree that holds everything together, which we learned at the beginning of this chapter. Folk and tribal roots. The cultural roots we have seen so far are well documented in many texts. India has also had rich oral traditions, that is, teachings or practices transmitted through everyday practice without written texts. This is the case of the Vedas. Among them are numerous folk traditions, that is, transmitted by common people, and tribal traditions transmitted by tribes. So India has a very old and rich culture. A lot of what we know about our past is written in books and other texts. But India also has rich oral traditions. What are oral traditions? Oral means spoken, not written. In olden times, people shared knowledge by talking, singing, or telling stories instead of writing things down. For example, the Vedas, very old and important text of India, were spoken and memorized, not written at first. Among them are numerous folk traditions. Folk traditions means traditions passed on by common people through songs, dances, festivals, and stories that families and villages shared with each other. And the other one is tribal traditions. These are special traditions followed by tribes. Tribes are groups of people who live close to nature, often in forests or mountains. They have their own languages, stories, music, and customs passed from one generation to the next. What is a tribe? There are many definitions for this social entity. Today, anthropologists usually consider a tribe to be a group of families or clans sharing a tradition of common descent, a culture, and a language, living as a close-knit community under a chief and holding no private property. So, a tribe is a group of families or clans who share a common history or ancestors. They have same culture, that is their way of life, traditions, and beliefs, and they speak the same language. They live together as a close community, often led by a chief, that is, a leader who guides them. In a tribe, people usually do not own private property like houses or land by themselves. Things are shared by the community. Interestingly, ancient India did not have a word for tribe. Tribes were just different janas that lived in a specific environment, such as forest or mountains. The Constitution of India uses the terms tribes and tribal communities in English and Janjati in Hindi. So, in ancient India, there was no word for tribe. Instead, tribes were simply considered as different kinds of janas, which means groups of people living in a particular area. And tribes were janas living in forests or mountains. Today, the Constitution of India uses the words tribes or tribal communities in English and the word Janjati in Hindi. According to official figures, in 2011, India had 705 tribes spread over most states, amounting to a population of about 104 million people, more than the populations of Australia and the United Kingdom together. According to official numbers are the numbers given by the government or a trusted authority after proper study or survey. For example, in India, the government counts people in a big survey called the census. The numbers from the census are called official numbers because they are checked and recorded. So, according to official numbers from 2011, India has 705 tribes. These tribes live in many different states all over the country. Together, about 104 million people, that's 10 crore 40 lakh people belong to these tribes. The total number of tribal people in India is more than the number of people living in Australia and the United Kingdom together. In the 19th century, anthropologists studying tribes often described them as primitive or inferior to civilized people. With deeper studies of tribal communities and their rich and complex cultures, such biased judgments have been mostly abandoned. In the 19th century, some anthropologists, that is, people who study different groups of people, thought tribes were primitive, that is, they are not developed, or even inferior, that is, less than others, and that civilized people were better. These were wrong and unfair ideas. They were called biased judgments. Biased means being unfair. Later, when more careful studies were done, people found out that tribal communities have rich, complex and beautiful cultures. They have their own language, art, music, farming methods, stories and more. So now, most people no longer use words like primitive or inferior to talk about tribes. There has been a constant interaction between folk and tribal traditions and the leading schools of thought, such as those we mentioned in this chapter. Deities, concepts, legends, and rituals have been freely exchanged in both directions. So, folk tradition, tribal tradition, and other schools of thought have always shared ideas with each other. They share things like deities, that is, gods and goddesses, concepts, that is, ideas about life, the world, and how to live. Legends, that is, old stories. Rituals, special ways of praying or celebrating. This sharing went both ways. Sometimes local people took ideas from the big religions and sometimes big religions took ideas from the local traditions. For instance, according to tradition, Jagannath, worshipped at Puri, Odisha, was originally a tribal deity. This is also the case with various forms of the mother goddess worshipped across India. So this sharing and learning from each other created a rich and diverse culture in India. For example, in Odisha, there is a famous temple in a place called Puri, where people worship a god named Jagannath. Today, Jagannath is seen as a form of Lord Vishnu, an important god in Hinduism. But long ago, according to tradition, Jagannath was first worshipped by tribal people. That means he was originally a tribal god. And later, his worship became part of the larger Hindu religion. The same thing happened with many forms of the mother goddess, like Durga or Kali, who are worshipped in different parts of India. Many of these goddesses were also first worshipped by local or tribal communities and later became part of major religions. Some tribes, on the other hand, adopted Hindu deities long ago and possess their own versions of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. This has been well documented from India's northeastern states all the way to Tamil Nadu. So some tribes also started worshipping Hindu gods long ago. They also created their own versions of famous stories like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. These versions are found in many places from the northeastern states of India all the way down to Tamil Nadu in the south. How have such interactions taken place for so long and so naturally? It is, in the end, because folk, tribal, and Hindu belief systems have many similar concepts. For instance, in all three elements of nature, such as mountains, rivers, trees, plants, and animals, and some stones too, are regarded as sacred because there is consciousness behind all of them. So, how have folk, tribal, and Hindu beliefs mixed so easily and for such a long time? It's because they share many similar ideas. For example, all three believe that parts of nature like mountains, rivers, trees, plants, and animals, and even some stones are sacred or special. They think that these things have consciousness, which means they are alive in a way and deserve respect. Because of these shared beliefs, these traditions connect and influence each other naturally. Indeed, tribes generally worship many deities associated with those natural elements. For the Toda tribals of the Nilgiris of Tamil Nadu, for instance, one of them is pictured in the image on the right. Over 30 peaks of this mountain range are residences of a god or a goddess. Those peaks are so sacred that the Todas avoid pointing to them with a finger. Many tribes in India worship nature. This means they believe that natural things like mountains, rivers, and trees are holy and connected to gods and goddesses. One such tribe is the Toda tribe. They live in the Nilgiri hills in Tamil Nadu. For the Todas, over 30 mountain peaks are believed to be the homes of gods or goddesses. These peaks are so sacred, that is, holy, that the Toda people don't even point at them with a finger. They show respect in every way. But despite this multiplicity of deities, as with Hinduism, many tribal groups have a concept of a higher divinity or supreme being. For example, several tribes of Arunachal Pradesh worship Donyapolo, a combined form of the sun and the moon, who later rose to the higher status of a supreme god. So even though many tribal groups worship many gods and goddesses, just like in Hinduism, they also believe in one main god or a supreme power. Example, in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, some tribal groups worship a god called Donyapolo. Dony means sun, Polo means moon. At first, they worshipped the sun and moon. Later, these two were joined into one powerful god, Donyapolo, who became the supreme god for them. This is also the case of the god Kandoba in parts of central India. In eastern India, the Munda and Santal tribals, among others, worship Singbonga, a supreme deity who created this whole world. There are many more such examples. So just like Donyapolo, many other tribal communities in India also believe in one supreme god who is the creator of the world. Example, Kandoba, worshipped in parts of central India. Singbonga, worshipped by the Munda and Santal tribes in eastern India. They are believed to be the supreme god who created the world. And there are many more such examples in different parts of India. The Indian sociologist Andre Bettel summed up this situation in these words. Thousands of castes and tribes on the Indian subcontinent have influenced each other in their religious beliefs and practices since the beginning of history and before. That the tribal religions have been influenced by Hinduism is widely accepted. But it is equally true that Hinduism, not only in its formative phase but throughout its evolution, has been influenced by tribal religions. Sociologist means a person who studies how people live together in groups like families, communities, or whole societies. They learn about how people behave, their customs, traditions, and how different groups influence each other. For example, Andre Bettel is a sociologist who studies how different groups in India like tribes and caste affect each other's beliefs and ways of living. The Indian sociologist Andre Bettel said that in India, there are thousands of castes and tribes. Such long ago, even before written history, they have been sharing religious ideas, learning from each other, influencing each other's customs and practices. So they didn't stay separate. They mixed and helped shape each other's beliefs. It is true that tribal religions have been influenced by Hinduism. But it is also true that Hinduism in its formative phase, that is, the beginning stage when something is being formed or developed, and during its evolution, as it kept changing and growing over time, has been influenced by tribal religions too. This means both tribal and Hindu traditions have learned from each other and shaped each other over many years. Clearly, the result of this long interaction has been mutual enrichment. In this manner, folk and tribal beliefs and practices also count among India's cultural roots. We will further develop this point in the next chapter. So, castes, tribes, and different groups in India have been sharing ideas for a very long time. They have learned from each other. They have added to each other's beliefs and tradition. This is called mutual enrichment. It means everyone gained something and became richer in culture. So, folk traditions and tribal beliefs and customs are an important part of India's cultural roots. They help make India's culture strong and unique. We will learn more about this in the next chapter. Before we move on, let's review the important things we have learned so far. The Vedas, India's earliest text, gave rise to several schools of thought. Vedanta and Yoga are among the best known. The Vedas are the oldest and most important books from ancient India. They helped people think deeply about life and the world around them. From these Vedas, many different ideas and ways of thinking were born. Two of the most well-known are Vedanta, which teaches about the soul and the universe, and Yoga, which teaches how to keep the body and mind healthy and peaceful. These schools of thought helped shape Indian culture and beliefs. Buddhism and Jainism departed from the authority of the Vedas and laid emphasis on some specific values and practices. So, while many Indian traditions followed the teachings of the Vedas, Buddhism and Jainism chose a different path. They did not follow the Vedas and instead focused on their own ideas. Both religions taught people to be kind, live simply, speak the truth, and control their desires. They believed that doing good actions was the most important part of life. Although these schools had different principles and methods, they also shared some important concepts. They were all looking for the cause of suffering and the means of removing ignorance. So, even though the different schools of thought like Vedanta, Yoga, Buddhism, and Jainism had different ideas and ways of teaching, they all wanted to answer the same big questions. They all tried to find out why do people suffer, how can we remove ignorance, which means not knowing the truth. So, even if their paths were different, their goal was to help people live better, wiser, and happier lives. Tribal belief systems and art have interacted for millenniums with Hinduism. There was free borrowing and giving from every side. Tribal belief systems generally regard the land and its features as sacred. They often have, at the same time, a higher concept of divinity. For thousands of years, tribal beliefs and Hinduism have influenced each other. They shared ideas, stories, and even art. Tribal communities usually see nature like land, rivers, hills, and trees as sacred or holy. They also believe in a higher power or divine force, just like other religions. So, even though their beliefs may seem different, there has been a lot of sharing and respect between tribal traditions and Hinduism. The banyan tree is an apt illustration for the themes in chapters 7 and 8 and a fine symbol for Indian civilization. With its deep root system, massive trunk, and branches spreading in all directions, it can extend to a vast area and last for many centuries. It shelters a variety of flora and fauna and encourages its branches, so united at the trunk, to throw fresh roots of their own. Indeed, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism regard the banyan tree as sacred. So, the banyan tree is a great way to understand Indian civilization and the ideas in chapters 7 and 8. Banyan tree has deep roots like India's long history, a strong trunk like the core values and beliefs in India, and branches that spread out in all directions like the many different cultures, traditions, and religions in India. Even though the branches grow in different ways, they are still connected to the same trunk. Just like that, Indian civilization allows many different ideas to grow while staying connected. The banyan tree also gives shade and shelter to many living things, just like Indian culture supports many ways of life. The banyan tree's branches can even grow their own roots while still being connected to the main tree. This shows how new traditions can grow from old ones while staying united. That's why Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism all see the banyan tree as sacred. So with this, we have completed Chapter 7, India's Cultural Roots. I hope you found it easy to understand. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you again in our next video. Bye bye.